Now we shall hear from the academic sphere. Pekka Gronow is from the University of Helsinki, someone with very long experience in the field of intellectual property, music, ethnology of music.
Thank you. I should perhaps add that before my present academic work, I was employed for many years at the Finnish Broadcasting Company, and one of my tasks there was supervising the music reporting, the reporting of copyrights. And every year the Finnish Broadcasting Company airs about 500,000 tracks of music, and all of them are reported in great detail. What happens to these reports when they go to the collecting societies and so on, that was one part of my job. And I found it, but I didn't, I'm happy to say that the situation in Finland is somewhat better than in the UK, which I was really surprised to share some of the information from my colleagues. But I think it's characteristic of the way in which the directive has been prepared that the EU Commission has not had any interest in making a real study of the likely effects of the extension. There exists a huge amount of data on the sales of sound recordings and on their use in broadcasts and in public performance. Most of this data has not been published, but it is routinely collected by interested parties such as record companies, collecting societies and broadcasters, and it would have been easy to find out, for instance, how much 49-year-old records, which are still protected today, are being sold and broadcast today, and where the money goes, who gets it, how is it distributed, in fact, by the various agencies. On the basis of this information, it would have been easy to make estimates of how much these recordings are sold a few years later if the extension is passed. What happens really? But the Commission was clearly not interested in such trivial facts. Instead, the impact assessment promises great things to aging musicians, record companies, and so on. And maybe they are some of them are fairy tales. Most of these calculations are not based on published research. And I think it's obvious that the way the directive has been born here, that as the result of successful lobbying, the Commissioner has decided to extend the term, whatever the cost, and then told his staff to write the motivation. If you read the impact assessment very closely, if you're familiar with the field, you will find many errors, many factual errors, and a lot of misleading information there. And as we know by now, for most musicians and for almost all smaller record companies, there will be no benefits at all. And what is also important to note, that the extension will, for instance, it will not harmonize the protection of sound recordings in Europe and in the United States. Instead, it would create a situation where American record companies would have more protection in Europe than European record companies in the United States. As we all should know, American copyright law is quite different from European law, and performers have very little protection in the United States. And neither performers or record companies receive any royalties for the airplay of their recordings in the United States. So, for instance, if a European record is broadcast in the United States, the performers don't get anything. If the American record of the same age is broadcast in Europe, not only the record company gets money in some European countries, not in Scandinavia, but the share of the American musicians because they don't really have any rights in America. It goes to the record company. And as the arguments presented in favor of the extension have been shot down, the Commission has been coming up with new explanations. It was interesting at the initial hearing in the legal committee here in this House a few months ago. Tilman Luder, the head of the Commission's copyright unit, told us that the extension is unavoidable because Greek musicians already have protection for lifetime. Well, that's good, but the special features of Greek law were already well known in '93, where the present directive was passed. And no one has claimed that the situation will be unfair competition. We don't have a rush of record labels moving to Greece because they have better protection. One might now ask why we are making such noise about the extension, even if the benefits are not as large as has been claimed. Is there really so much harm if the extension creates even little income to someone, even if there's a slight extra cost to the consumer? The problem is that while the directive will not do the things it says it will do, it will have many side effects which have not been recognized by the Commission. If you read the arguments presented by the Commission, and indeed if you listen to the discussion here, we have been talking about record companies and musicians who played on records. But how many of you have really read the directive word by word? Please raise your hands. Very good. But not many outsiders have done that. And if you have read it, you will find out it's not about records at all. It's about, if you read the English text, it's about fixations of a performance in a phonograph, which is quite different. The word phonograph is a translator's error. If you read the original German text, it uses the term Tonträger, sound carrier, in legalese phonogram, not phonograph. And in copyright law, this covers any recorded sound, including home recordings made by your grandfather. The biggest producers of sound recordings in Europe are not record companies, they are broadcasters. And all the European broadcast archives taken together have at least several million hours of recorded sound, which will also be covered by the extension. But there is no study of the effects of the extension of broadcast archives. And if you look at the list of bodies which the Commission has heard, they had no interest in contacting the broadcasting companies.